Sharks are fast, strong, and have a long lifespan. When you think of them, you might picture sharks as terrifying creatures that eat humans alive.
Looks like we have a white shark.
But the truth is, we are the terrifying creatures. They face so many threats in their lives, and it is because of us. Problems like illegal overfishing, bycatch, and the demand for shark fins threaten their life and make them vulnerable. There are approximately 60 registered species of sharks, and around 30 have commercial value here in Ecuador. According to WWF, the 5 species with the most commercial interest here in Ecuador are treasure sharks, pelagic treasure sharks, blue sharks, silky sharks, and hammerhead sharks. Of these 5 species, escalloped and great hammerhead sharks are critically endangered. Another one is endangered. The other 2 ones are vulnerable, and the last one is nearly endangered. According to Executive Order number 486, in Ecuador, people that catch non-protected species of sharks as product of bycatch are permitted to have the documents necessary to commercialize all of it. But what consequences does this bring to our marine ecosystem?
Well, so not all species of shark, right? So there are some species of sharks that have been protected for several years now, such as the whale shark, and then the white shark and the basking shark, which I don't even know if they're in Ecuador, but we're protecting them just in case. But you're right. If other species of shark are caught as bycatch, then fishermen are allowed to land them. And this has resulted in over 200,000 sharks landed every year. And the problem is that many of these species, they cannot handle that level of exploitation. So their populations start to decline. And if their populations are declining, then they're no longer performing as a group their role in the ecosystem as top predators. And generally in any ecosystem, but often in open water ecosystems, top predators drive processes of natural selection. So really, if you want a healthy marine ecosystem, you would want to have your top predators there.
Sharks have a long lifespan, resulting in a late sexual maturity and net spawns. That is why sharks can't handle overfishing. It is difficult for them to reproduce and compensate the quantity of times they get caught. Now, are there ways to reduce the amount of sharks caught in bycatch?
I think the first thing we have to do is have an honest discussion of whether this is incidental or not. And I think, we first of all need to decide on a definition of bycatch or incidental catch. And then there's several things that you can do. First of all, when a fisherman catches something that he doesn't want, he is free to put that back in the water. But if there is a value to it in the market, then why would he do that? One of the things we need to do is address this issue nationally in our consumption of shark meat. Ecuador does consume shark meat. Where I live here in Quito, we consume shark meat. A lot of the time we don't know that we're doing it because it's labeled as something else like corvina or tuna or something. And so I think there's several things we can do. We can crack down on labeling because that's fraud. We can also educate people that eating shark meat is not good for your health because they're top predators. They accumulate toxins such as mercury. It's also not healthy for the marine ecosystem. We can we can promote sustainable alternatives to shark meat, and we can start clamping down on the export of shark fins to the Asian market, especially for species that are endangered. Because again, we think of sharks as like sharks, but there's 60 species of sharks in Ecuador, and about 30 of them have some kind of commercial value. So we need to start looking at them species by species. Some are critically endangered, some are near threatened, some maybe not be a problem. And so we can address these on a species by species level.
But bycatch is not the only reason why sharks are getting overfished. Illegal overfishing is another threat for them too. How do we protect our water? Since Ecuador has more water territory than the actual land, what are we doing to protect it?
That is a very good question. It's difficult, very, very difficult, to establish measures to control the huge maritime territory. Only to put an example of the size of the territory we are talking about. The maritime territory is 5 times more than terrestrial territory, even more. So it's really complicated to establish controls directly with physical presence. Usually, what the Marine uses is satellite information, aerial maritime exploration, the marine airplanes that fly around and guard, and in case they find any abnormality, those are reported to the control stations inland, and they send ships. But the timing of the transportation of the ships are way too big. A ship, in order to, for example, from here to Galapagos Islands, takes 1 or 2 days to get there. So, the timing does not facilitate the control. The actions that are now taking place are establishing a domain that is a system that permits to have real-time control of everything that occurs in the sea. For this, some devices have been implemented. It is the automatic identification of ship system that allows the ships to stay sending permanently position of their units. We have the RIT, that is another system that obligates all the ships that come to Ecuador to turn on some devices that permits to follow their position. That plus the satellite images and the aerial maritime exploration consists the monitoring system that face to these threats of exploitation. But it isn't enough. It is not enough because of the great quantity of ships we're talking about. And it is not enough because of the political context of the area. Ecuador can apply completely their jurisdiction, their sovereignty, only to 12 miles away. After the 12 miles to the 200 miles exists a zone called Economical Exclusive Zone, where, by international right, all ships can sail, and you can't prevent them from sailing. When the ships can sail, then, if they are fishing vessels, then they can only use their nets. And we don't know, so when the petrol gets there to make maybe an interdiction, they can pull up their nets and they are not doing anything wrong. The control is really complicated because it is not only the distance, not only is the great extension, but all the political and international context.
Are we the only ones catching sharks here in Ecuador?
I am afraid not. We revised a study from about a couple of years ago, 2018, and we found out that while it is true that the massive presence of Chinese vessels draws the attention because they come to fish groups, they do it seasonally, they are, we're talking about 100 to 200 ships, 130 ships that are in different locations, but clustered, they are grouped and are arriving permanently, but it is always in a fixed season of the year. But we found out in the study that they are not the only ones. There is a permanent presence month to month, and it's not fixed during a season, but throughout the year. Sadly, far from the media attention from the presence of Chinese vessels, the order of presence of ships in Ecuadorian territory is first Colombian vessels, Panamanian vessels, then Peruvian vessels, Venezuelan vessels, and last Chinese vessels. That is the order of presence of foreign vessels. in Ecuadorian maritime territory. That means that the agreements made with these countries needs to be checked in order to make a better management of the treaties and the presence of these ships. They are not only Chinese vessels, I know that because of the way that these vessels sail in groups and in great quantities. They can draw our attention, but they are not the only vessels that fish and sail in Ecuador.
Foreign vessels that come to Ecuador bring a lot of concern, especially among media, since lots of species captured are vulnerable species, or even endangered species according to the IUCN Red List. But they are not doing anything illegal if they don't enter the economic exclusive zone. According to investigations by the ecological newspaper Mongabay, protected and non-protected sharks that are caught in Ecuador travel all the way to Peru in order to be commercialized externally. What consequences are we going to have if we continue overfishing sharks?
Well, we're going to run out of food, basically. So billions of people depend on the ocean for their livelihood, their economic livelihood, and their sustenance, their food. And so, and we've kind of lived in balance for many thousands of years. And then probably, well, I guess things really started getting out of hand once at the end of the Second World War, when kind of industrial fishing really started, exploding, and you have these big fleets that are able to go offshore. So, we're running out. We're overfishing our stocks. We're running out of food. We're fishing down the food web as well. So we've kind of run out. We're removing the top predatory species, and we're kind of moving down the food chain. Essentially, the impacts are going to be several, because we're going to have ecosystem degradation, loss of food supply, and loss of livelihoods.
So what should we do? Should bycatch be criminalized?
I think not, because like I said, so I think you have to define what bycatch is. That's the key. Because like I said, you could go out and fish and catch sharks even though you don't want to, because they're going to take your hook. In fact, it's happened to me. I was trying to catch some tuna for a study, and I had the tuna, and I was reeling it in, but by the time it got to the boat, it wasn't a tuna anymore. A shark had taken the tuna, and there was a shark on the hook. So that would be bycatch, right? So sometimes you can't help it. So I don't think making bycatch criminal is the way to go. I think what you want to do is to define it. I think there are certain species that say, well, if you do catch it, you have to release it. You cannot bring it on board, like the whale shark, white shark, now the hammerheads, you cannot sell it. So I think by those measures, and if it's species specific, but I think a blanket ban on shark bycatch is likely not to work, given the governance structure of Ecuador.
If you ever buy a product with any part of a shark, just remember, just because it is already dead, it doesn't mean you're not affecting the environment. You're increasing the demand. Therefore, you're the reason why fishermen keep the shark, instead of throwing it back to the sea, or why fishermen are trying to catch sharks in the first place. Shark is consumed in collagen products and shark oil pills and soups as other kinds of fish, as toyo, and even in jewelry. If demand still exists, people are going to try and satisfy it. So now everything narrows to what are we going to do to change this situation. This isn't a video just for Ecuadorians. Sharks need our help. They need all our help.